full of nails.
Oh, really?
Just have like a dirt road.
Yeah, the old-fashioned nails.
That's where it, yep.
Does it
In
have
fact,
little decorations?
They might be old-fashioned nails that they made way back when.
Yep.
Who knows when they were.
May just been sprinkled them up.
Out there, square nails. and
So
everything.
that should last through the spring, you think?
Ah.
Jonathan, you ready? We call the meeting to order. Everybody, welcome to the September 26th meeting of the Finance Committee. We will be holding a hearing in a few moments also when we move along, but I ask the Secretary to call the roll, please.
Present tonight, Chairman Pigeon, Vice Chairman Hurd, Clerk Bailey, Stuart Noda, Jim Fonce, Jerry Stefanski. We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Is there any citizen participation? Anyone would like to step up and express an opinion or anything? There being none, moving on to the town meeting articles. Can I have a motion to open the hearing, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. One of the items that was hanging over from last week's meeting was the harbor master, and I'd like to ask Gary if he might come up. At that point in time, there was a young lady who was lost, and his crew participated in the recovery.
Do you guys have the articles, by chance, the whole?
The article?
Yes.
This is the finance committee you're talking to.
Yes, but I just want to make sure Derek did give it to you, right? It did give you.
Oh, well, in that case, you better give us one.
Okay.
You said Kelly, I was just, is it done?
No,
Okay, that's,
I was told that they were all forwarded to you. Sorry, they're not stapled, I promise in case.
In case there's changes.
No changes, you have it.
Thank you, Gary. That's all of us.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, it's your request for $146,330. What are you gonna do with all that?
Well, we've got a variety of projects, but one of them obviously has a challenged article doing the same things. Mine's a little more clean. But the intent is to start the initial stages of getting a dredge survey started, as well as start looking at some of the initial steps that we need to do for applying for some grants. The Governor's Seaport Council has a small dredge grant that's coming out now, so we have to start getting things in line. I've been in contact with CLE Engineering over in Marion. They're probably one of the premier groups around here that we've worked with in the past that has been very successful with this route that we're deciding to take. And I completely agree with Mr. Jepson. I just don't think we need two articles, because I believe his article is looking for funding from the Seaport Council, whereas our funding at the close of town meeting and approval of the Attorney General, we have monies available, as opposed to getting approval here, then having to apply, and then not knowing if we're going to get the grant or if we are going to get the grant. So I think this is a wise investment for us to get this moving, and then obviously go into something bigger and start pushing for the future on what we need to do for waterway maintenance and channels and mooring fields and water flow and just a variety of areas. So one of the projects that I have coming up is the onset floating docks. We obviously, the last few storms have taken their toll on the floating concrete docks that we have now. I'm looking, after we did a full condition survey a couple of years ago, and the condition survey did request that, or advise us that the docks are no longer repairable, they need to be replaced. I spoke with Bellingham Marine, which was the original builders of those floating docks, and they said that they're the oldest in their existence that are still operating today. So I guess that's a good thing for them, but we've gotten to the point now where we've actually had to pull some of the concrete squares out because we just can't get them to line up anymore. So We've had to build floats and wooden docks and wedge them into the concrete and basically Band-Aids on bullet holes with the dock here. So we have some wood fingers now on it right now, temporarily being used. And we had to replace a couple pilings that were pulled out in the October storm of last year. So I think we're at the point now where the investment is needed. And we're looking to increase the size of floating dock. We're going to go from 7-foot wide main dock to a 12-foot wide main dock. We're gauging it for the future of handicap accessibility. If we do get the pier going, where the gangway would have to accommodate certain pitches and elevations for proper access. So all of the fingers, and we will have one dock that is specifically gauged for access. We're looking at putting water, lighting, the waste pump right down on the dock so people can pull in and pump out rather than pull up to the face of the pier, then climb up the ladder to get to it. So we want to bring all the amenities down to the floating dock. We also have our shellfish upwellers at that site too. So we're just looking at where we're going to place those, if we're going to build it into the dock or if we're going to still have them separate and floating to the side. So this would require all new pilings. We're going wood, we're going plastic tubs instead of the concrete. It's easy for us to pull some pins, disconnect, take the docks out in the event of a storm. We'd also be looking, as part of the article, to have a ice management in place. So we'll have ice eaters and put them in the water so it keeps the water circulating, and bubbler system to make sure we don't have any winter damages. But for us, you know, right now I'd need a contractor to come in to take our docks out. They're all tied together, different fasteners. So if we ever came to the point where we had to get them out of here, it's a process. So with going to the wood, we're able to do it. I can hire a crane company. We pull the pins, we disconnect, we can service the docks, we can repair them, a lot of stuff in-house that we can do going from this concrete, which I love the concrete, love to have them, double the money, but repair-wise and us taking care of it, this is our route. I think this is our most economical route. So we'd be going all new pilings, larger fingers in the front, and because the dock is wider, it pushes out the fingers more. We're able to handle larger vessels tying up too. So it's a nice feature.
It will be bottoming out, trying to get inside.
No, they won't now. We can accommodate some pretty deep draft vessels, so it's not too bad.
And there's a cash flow in that?
I'm sorry?
You get cash for people?
Yes, we
pulling
do.
up to it?
We try to, you know, during the height of the season, we try to push people to the moorings and try to keep it just dockage in and out. But we do rent $2 a foot. There's also some vessels that'll come in. They do loading and unloading, commercial 6-pack fishing boats, things like that. So they utilize the docks as well. So I think the town charges them $40 a foot to do a commercial operation off the pier for that. So.
This is all in addition to the repair
Yeah, well,
of
that
the pier itself.
Yeah, I believe the town administrator does all the billing for the commercial boats, so we just deal with that. The problem is that they do tend to create a little bit of a mess. So going into this project, we'd like to really look at some methods we could do to eliminate all of the fish bags being dragged and making a mess of the dock. So that's one thing I want to look at going into next year.
Sand tank emptying, is that a cash flow too?
No, that's free. That's paid for actually through the Clean Vessel Act. So they'll actually be contributing money towards this project to pay for all the pump and the piping and the plumbing and everything to get the system down onto it.
So that's grants?
Yes, it is. Yep. Every year we get the grant for. We just got the new pump out boat. You guys approved the 25% match last year, I believe. So that boat's in operation now. So it's
75% then?
they pay 75, but for projects they can pay a little bit more. They're pretty flexible on trying to get things done. So I don't know if you'd like to continue. A lot of it's.
Your version of the dredging survey.
Yep. Dredging survey, as I discussed, we're looking at a few options. I've just been in brief discussions with CLE, so I'd like to, we're gonna have another meeting at some point and just try to get an idea of where we start and proceeding forward. So there's a lot to it. A full dredge survey for the town is extremely expensive. Barnesville had one done, and it's pretty significant document, so, but I think it's, if we do it in some phases.
Much higher than the 10,000 we were quoted in the other article.
You know, for a full survey, you're not gonna get the 10,000,
He was
that's,
just doing Wareham River.
that's, yeah, well, this
There or something.
this has nothing to do with the federal dredge project. This is the federal dredge, they have certain criteria that we already submitted the application for, they've already assigned us a project manager. So we have the federal government's here, they just need to make sure it meets their criteria, we just need to push them, and, you know, I think that's something that we could tie into it to try and help us push them, but for the most part, oversight of the federal project, you know, we have a lot of things that we can do on our smaller level, which we can get dredging done a little bit faster. It's obviously still expensive, but if we can approach for some different funding sources, like, you know, Tempest Knob is a big one for me. I think that we need to clean out that boat ramp going to the main channel. Shell Point is a concern because you've got a lot of sand movement there. Back when Plymouth County dredge started, Plymouth County decided to buy a dredge, and I think they bought the machine, and I don't know if they bought the barge, and the whole thing's been a debacle. And they wanted us to buy into it, and I was hesitant, and we're kicking around, and now after we backed out, we've been watching it, and they've been kind of crumbling everywhere they turn, so we're not really sure what they were up to, so we're glad we didn't buy into it right now. So, dredging's expensive. It would be expensive with the Plymouth County dredge, it would be expensive if we hired somebody, so.
My question was, if we pay for the survey, can we afford the dredging?
This won't pay for a full survey, this will just get us going, that's it. It's gonna start us getting in the right direction for being able to apply. So we'll have up to that point.
Are they 50% matching, or they
Yeah,
just
no.
pay for something, or what?
For dredging, oh
Yeah,
God, you may see some match. We'll put some applications in, but now it's starting to turn to match, because the one they just came out with was not matched. Now it's coming to match. So that opens up a whole different scenario. It's like the federal grants for the port security, everything's like 25, 75 now, so, but a lot of towns shy away from it, so we've gotta start building up funds to be able to make that 25 or 50 or whatever the state's lining this stuff up.
10,000 isn't all that much, I'm just
It's not,
concerned that we're putting a $10,000 survey on the shelf because we can't afford it.
well, they estimated what we needed to get done to put us on the radar for applying is between 5,000 to 7,000,
Yep.
and upwards of 10 just in case, but I think we need to utilize all 10 to get us where we need to go. If we don't, it gets turned back.
You've always been good about finding money in the past. so-
Well, we keep trying. I would like to, there are a few big projects I'd like to tackle before we're out of here, and,
Sure. So you think we can afford some dredging when we
I
get
think,
this survey done?
I think we'll be on the radar, and I hope that they are very accommodating to us.
So put some kind of shovel in the water and dig some stuff out.
Yeah, I tend to.
I think the survey is just the criteria you need to apply for the grant.
There's certain levels that we have to have in place to be able to apply for the grant, and this will get us to that location and then some. So, and then we have to decide what we're gonna do. Are we going to go with a full survey where you're talking 6 digits, if not more? So we have a lot of waterways. We're not Barnesville, we don't have a lot of sandbars and moving sand and this and that, but I think it might be a lot less than what they would do, but going forward, I think it's important for us to have.
Gary, Mr. Jepson came before us and discussed also the same numbers. He was talking 5 to 7 as an
Yeah.
estimate, and asking for 10. You're talking the same numbers.
I would cap it at 10, yeah.
So you're talking around 10 also,
Yes, yeah.
coming out of your budget. And he was also saying that one of the reasons that he brought it forth was he was trying to get interest from the marine, interest in town. Marine interest, we have several marinas and obviously you folks who
I feel that
Very
we have a very proactive approach in the community, and we try to get out information as fast as possible. I mean, our social media is big. We try to get into the papers, everything that takes place. I mean, we really try to do a lot of public outreach. So I'm not worried about the article getting in and getting passed or getting not passed, or whatever route it takes. But when it comes down to trying to get people on board, I've already spoken to the marinas, I've already spoken to the, all the property owners that signed the petition. We've all talked. So, well, most of us have talked, I should say, but, I'm not concerned about that right now. I feel that when the time comes, we will be right out there.
Well, I'm sure you will. I just wanted to confirm that you're doing all the
Yeah.
things that Don is saying we really
I
need to
absolutely
do.
agree with Don. I just think there are two conflicting ways. We have a opportunity to get funding a lot faster than the second method. so-
Right, and the second method may not even give us funding. We can
Correct.
apply for grants and not
Right.
get it. This way, if we approve it at town meeting,
Yes.
it comes out of existing funds and we proceed.
In that same fund that he was referencing is the same one that we're starting to look at for the onset pier and trying to get that project going too, because, we're gonna need to find some big numbers to help us get the cost down. It's just, every day it's gonna go up, and right now, we need as much help as we can get, so. Just on a couple other issues here, our typical mooring management system, that takes care of all of our billing, our mailing, that monitors all of the moorings in town, the boats, mailing of the permits. So that coverage, communications is a big issue. We have radios that are pretty outdated, and we're trying to get, just radios that everything matches the police departments as we work with them. So we would be purchasing the exact same radios they have, so batteries are interchangeable, service, everything, it's going all through the same company. We have lease vehicles that we've gotten over the past couple of years that we're finishing up payments on one of them, and that will be off the books, and then we have two others that we replaced. So this will be the second payment for that. Dump trailer, we use it for everything. We take our machine on and off the barge, we're loading moorings, we're moving markers all over the place. We have some flatbeds, but this allows us to not have to, usually when we start pulling moorings and we start taking stuff out of the water, we do shellfish relays, everything is loaded onto it. We have to borrow a dump truck for municipal maintenance, and normally it's like rolling the dice and we can't get it. And to buy a truck is expensive, whereas I can get a dump trailer for under $8,000 and have it going, and it holds twice the capacity, so we back down to the ramp, we can load the machine into it, we load all the gear, everything that we pull out of the water into this. It'll help with the shellfish relays, like I was saying, just pretty much everything, we're always using it.
So you wanna buy a new one, or you're making payments on it?
No, this will be a one payment, just to
So you want
purchase.
to buy a new one?
Yeah, it'd just be a trailer, so.
Your Eco Purchase mooring system management, wouldn't that be more appropriately covered under your operational budget?
This takes, because it's waterways related, we use the harbor service permits to cover the cost of it, so it doesn't come out of the general budget.
Does not?
Does not, well, that way I don't have it coming out of Derek's numbers, it's coming out of the waterways to cover the expenses as opposed to the numbers that he has. So it just, we try to inject money into our budget so it doesn't take as much pressure on the general funds. So, but this is just one method of eliminating those payments. Luckily, we haven't had to go hit the free cash, we haven't had to go in for the capital items, which, obviously like municipal maintenance and other agencies utilize, so. Try to be somewhat self-sustaining.
Yeah, we will, that 146 cover from the repair down goes up.
Everything.
Everything.
And the floating docks, it's a yearly payment, so we're looking up to $60,000 a year, because of the work involved with the
So
plumbing, electrical.
you don't have to come up with the 420?
No, we'll be paying it over, so this will end up being financed, and we'll be paying it out of the harbor service permits every single year, as opposed to having to go to the general
How
fund.
much you think it would be every year?
60,000, yep.
What do you think your revenue is on that pier? Will be once it's,
Revenue, I don't think is gonna match it, it's just public access. We don't,
30,000.
I don't think it's that much. I don't think it's 10,000. It's, you know, it's just basically convenience, people getting in and out of the town. It's basically the main artery to anything coming out of the water to go into the center, so just, we gotta keep it good, so. I really don't mind that it's not a huge revenue generator, it's just, it's public access.
Any other questions?
I have one other question. On the floating docks at Onset, you're talking about making them wider, they'll be more stable, I'm sure. That would probably help in an emergency. If you're bringing someone in an emergency, they need to get on.
Everything is gonna be larger than you see now. The fingers are wider, the main dock is wider. We're gonna use the same gangway for now until the pier gets figured out and we go from that point. So everything going from the main fixed piers and the floating docks, that's going to be a separate issue at some point to be addressed. But yes, it's definitely much more complicated. I don't know if you've been down to Zeco Marine, but we were looking at the same, pretty much the same dock layout that he had installed, so.
Much better than what they had before.
Yeah, I mean, wood docks, you always look at them as, they're nice, but the stability is unbelievable with these docks, and it's huge cost savings for us, so. Like I said, if I went to concretes for this, I would be adding 150, 200,000 to it, so. It's just an expensive dock system.
Any other questions? Being none, thank you very much, Gary.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Next item on our agenda is with the schools and the McKinney-Vento Fund transfer for a revolving account. And we'll go right after that, right into the big bucks. Appreciate if you just start so that everybody understands where the McKinney-Vento funds come from and why we have to transfer and what they'll do when we transfer.
McKinney-Vento is a federal, it comes to the state then awards the districts money. It is to help offset transportation of homeless students. So depending on how many homeless students the district has in a year will depend on how much money you get for McKinney-Vento. It's not a 100% reimbursement, it's a percentage. To date, I've not been given the number from the state of the McKinney-Vento. When it comes in, what we've done in the past is the town would vote to transfer the money into the revolving transportation account, and we use that to either help refurbish buses, vans, or transportation, help offset transportation.
So you essentially are requesting through this yearly thing, authorization to transfer whatever monies the state gives you into your transportation account.
Yes.
So you're getting permission ahead of time to do.
Well, we'll get last year's money coming in shortly, so that's what we're asking for.
That's right, you're running a year behind.
And it does not match what we spend in the transportation.
How do you determine what you spend? I mean, is it a certain per mile? What's the formula for that?
Well, really it varies. If we can do it in-house, from an in-house driver, it's much less expensive. Unfortunately, right now, we're running anywhere from 27 to 30 students that are homeless, and we're mandated to provide transportation. We have absolutely no say in where they're coming from, so we have to pick students up from Attleboro and transport them to and from school. That's the farthest one I know right now away. If we have to outsource, then depending on the vendor that is able to take the run, we charge is dependent upon that company.
So with like outsource is kind of easy then, because you get the bill from the company. The internal one, how do you determine that? It's salary, hourly salary, plus so
We have-
much for the bus expense and?
Yes, we have, our bus drivers have a pay scale, so they would go according to their scale, and depending on what mode of transportation they would be driving would depend on the cost that it would take us internally. We would much rather do internal. It's less expensive than going out to bid. Unfortunately, there's a huge shortage of drivers in the state of Massachusetts. Companies are unable to find bus drivers, CDL drivers. They're just not there. And so it's a very, very, very competitive market. And hence, we're not able to drive all our runs.
Excuse me, Kim. Does the school department put in a bill to the state for McKinney-Vento, or does the state just assign you based upon the number of homeless students that you have?
They assign us with the homeless students, and we'll submit the cost, but it doesn't really go.
Doesn't really matter.
No, not,
It doesn't come close to paying
not,
for it.
no, it does not.
So this is really a paperwork act that we're doing, just taking whatever the state gives, and they send a check to the town, and then the town transfers it to the school department.
It's,
It's rather arbitrary based on last year. Any other questions?
Nope, I'm fine.
Nope, we're fine. Moving right along. Okay, I understand you guys are asking for some $90 million. By all means, let us know why.
but we have a number of people with us, and we'll start with Jeff Sweat, who's the co-chair of the building committee.
Good evening, Jeff.
Good evening, everybody. We also have members of our construction management and architectural firms. We also have 2 members of the school committee. So we hope we have answers to every question, and we very much appreciate the fact that you gave us an extra week to refine the numbers. By opening, I will say that, yes, it's approximately a $90 million project. Of that $90 million, approximately $50 million will be reimbursed from the state. And of the total $90 million, a little over $70 million is what we'll call hard costs. And then the remaining, say, $18 million is about half contingency and half what we call soft costs, architectural, engineering, things like that. Yesterday, I had the mind-numbing, as one of them described it to me, experience of listening to 2 estimators try and figure out how they were off by more than $2 million and estimating that $70+ million hard costs. In the end, it was a very productive process, as it usually is, and we got down to a number that was actually very close to the budget that we originally had. Now, one of the things I want you to keep in mind is that there's an important meeting, as the 2 of you know, on Monday, where we'll actually make some final decisions about certain costs. 3 of them, for example, came up yesterday in front of the estimators. Do we have an elevator that goes to the roof? No joke. That's $1 million. Do we bury the utilities, or do we put them on poles? And what kind of air conditioning system or dehumidification system do we have? And that's a multi-million-dollar decision. So there are still decisions to be finalized, but based on the assumptions that have been made, we are talking about approximately a $90 million project, including $8 or $9 million worth of contingencies and a $50 million reimbursement at approximately 75% from the MSBA. So I have a sheet here which I will share with you. Just take one and pass it down. Because I'm sure that your primary concern is just what is this going to cost the taxpayers. So, based upon 39 million cost, which right now is a pretty good number based on the estimators, there are 6 options according to the town treasurer. Kelly, I'm sure there's one there for you. There are 6 options according to the town treasurer about how to actually pay that $39 million. And I've highlighted them with the key issues. If we just take the very first line, you can see 20 years, equal principal at 3.5%. Now, obviously, when this is ultimately bonded, the percentages could change a little. These numbers were valid a few months ago. Long-term interest rates haven't fluctuated a great deal since then, so this is based on an interest rate assumption of 3.5%. Now, the difference between the first line and the second line is simply the method of what you're paying down, and you're paying down a little bit more. So what happens is the cost per thousand actually starts out a little higher, and then as you pay it off over in this case 20 years, it goes down quite a bit, actually, about 2 cents a year per thousand. So line 2, you can see, is a flat rate, level debt, and that is essentially the average of the 96 and the 58. And then if you take the median assessed value in the town, which is approximately $250,000, that would work out to, on the flat rate, $205 per year, or a little over $50 per quarter. If you did the equal principal, you can see that it fluctuates all the way from $250 to $150. That's a decision I'll get to. It's not the school building decision, but I'll get to that process. And then, of course, if you go longer, 25 years, everything gets a little more. And if you go even longer to 30 years, you can see that there are several big changes. One is, of course, interest rates rise the longer you go. The amount of interest you pay is quite a bit larger. Literally, it essentially doubles from line 1 to line 6, from 14 million to 28 million. So you can see the actual cost to the town, to the taxpayers, although because it's a debt exclusion, it is literally fixed at that amount and simply stops when the payments are made. I recall in the middle school, we actually paid off early and actually used less than it was approved. So this really comes down to how much interest you want to pay, and how fast you want to pay it off, and what kind of quarterly annual burden you want to have for the taxpayers. The town administrator has indicated that he would like the school department to make this decision between 1 through 6. The superintendent and the school committee chair has decided that it's appropriate for the school building committee to make a recommendation, and for the school committee to make the decision as representatives of the taxpayers. So I believe it's on the agenda for the next school committee meeting for a discussion and a vote, so stay tuned. But to put this in perspective, if you take the level debt scenarios, lines 2, 4, and 6, if you use 20 years at 205.03 versus 30 years at 168, that's less than $40 per year difference, or on a tax bill basis, literally less than $10 per quarter difference, no matter what decision is made. So I've got lots of numbers I could throw at you, and lots of expertise behind me, but I won't presume that I know what you want to know, so fire away.
Have you done some sort of study in the community to see what would be most likely to pass?
In terms of these scenarios, no.
I mean, that's what really counts here, isn't it?
However, yes, it absolutely is what counts. We are conducting 3 community forums between now and town meeting, and we hope to glean exactly that sort of information. And we will obviously be incredibly transparent, not only about the numbers, but also about what exactly is being built and what value decisions have been made in that building process.
We also haven't had these numbers up until now to be able to ask what you're expressing.
And the website will include everything that people could or would want to know.
Seems like the big numbers have been stable for a couple months though, haven't they?
I'm sorry?
The big numbers have been stable for a couple months.
Right, but until, we were advised by the architects and the project manager that until the estimators had finished projecting the cost of the project, that, we should wait until then to.
And that's
finalize the
what happened
numbers.
yesterday morning. The refinements that may occur on Monday, I still think, tell me if I'm wrong, are still relatively minor compared to the big picture. So it's not gonna change, maybe it'll go down a little, maybe it'll go up a little, but we're talking about really very minor rounding error type decisions. Not necessarily minor decisions for the people who actually learn and work in the building, but in terms of the actual costs, they should be very minor.
Will we have to give back the reimbursement for the roof and the boiler at Deacon's?
That's deductible.
Yes, it's my understanding that the MSBA will want, but I believe that it's a depreciated value. I don't think it's the total value.
Jeff, what might be
Estimate on what it
helpful,
is.
if it's 205.03 for 20 years, that would be about $4,100 for the 20 years. If it was 168 for 30 years, that's 5,052. So sometimes it makes more sense to say, give the person a total, it's $4,000 over 20 years or 5,000 over 30. Right, because I look at it and it don't mean anything. I want to know what it means annually and for the life of the exclusion.
Your point is well taken. The only reason I'm hesitant to do that is when you're talking about decades, you really ought to do a net present value calculation because inflation, all the rest of that stuff plays a huge impact. So you're really, in terms of, those aren't constant 2018 dollars.
Well, then that's another column, right? Bring it down to net present value.
Fair enough, but I'm not sure how many people really want to get into inflation-adjusted net present value, et cetera, especially if it's a constant. Now,
Well, it still needs it at 168. There's a net present value implied in that when you say 30 years at one. I mean, that's 168 constant, but in 10 years from now, 168 is a 168.
you're 100% correct.
So either way, I mean, either if you do it a single year or 30 or 20 years, you still need to put a net present value.
But
Yes. Go.
Excuse me, isn't the net present value, if you're paying $205 a year, the first year, that's projected out for the 20th year also, you'll still be paying $205.
Exactly.
But it presumably,
Because the interest rate is fixed.
the issue is not how much you'll be paying, the issue is how much the dollar is worth on that day.
It's gonna be a lot less 10 years or 20 years from now.
My guess is anybody listening or watching on the outside is already totally confused. So I respect what you're saying, but in having talked a little bit with people, I think what people really want to know, I think they like the idea of it being fixed versus varying, which is lines 2, 4, and 6. And as long as they know it's not going to change, I think, the idea that it's about $40 a quarter, as an example, they can grab onto that. If I start multiplying $40 times the number of quarters they're going to pay, I don't know, between you and me, I think people will get lost in that big number.
I
I'm
agree.
sorry.
I think that's the number that people are focusing on and want to know what's the per year cost.
Well, I think they,
But by the way,
we're all financial people
with
here.
all respect, this is the kind of thing that the forums will tell us. If people want to know that sort of thing, then we will provide it, is the bottom line.
Well, bottom line is what we're going through, presenting on the floor at town meeting. So we're asking to authorization to borrow up to $90 million. Now, we're talking about how we're gonna get there, $205 based on that. The actual figure we're gonna be paying, which as you met with yesterday and trying to arrive at, is less than the 90 mil, but that's what we're authorizing. So if we're authorizing 90 mil, I think the amount that we're gonna be paying per month or yearly is what the people at town meeting are gonna be interested in. And understand, I've been in marketing a lot, they say, yeah, make sure you do your presentation to a 12-year-old. So I don't want to insult town meeting at all, but in the short period of time they're gonna be contemplating this, unfortunately, they're gonna want the very basic figures.
I agree.
How we arrive at them with, amongst ourselves, who quote-unquote know what we're talking about, is another issue, but understand that's what we have to present to town meeting. A very simple presentation of what they're gonna max out and what they're gonna pay per month.
And as I said, we will be able to tell from these forums just how confused people are, and it's our obligation, to make sure they have enough information so they don't feel confused.
Correct.
One of the things that may be confusing to people is the fact that this is a $90 million project, and we're asking to authorize $90 million. Now, we're only talking about 39 or 40 million that eventually the town's going to pay. So make sure that it's explained that you're going to be paying this in increments, and the state is going to be reimbursing in increments. So we should never get to, we better never get to 90 million.
That's for sure.
You have to distinguish, you're right, David, between the two. And they have to understand, yes, we're authorizing, but in reality, we will only borrow because MSBA, on a payment basis per month, hopefully the state remains liquid and we'll be getting that money for the balance.
Another question, what, say, two scenarios, the tax base increases 25% or decreases 25%? So you're looking to collect a certain amount every year. What if the tax base decreases and you don't collect the amount? Does that imply that the base rate will go up the next year for those 75% that are left? Because you're committed to pay a certain amount every year. You're committed to collect that certain
On the
amount.
bond, right?
I don't recall in my 6 years on the finance committee, the tax base ever going down. Thank goodness, thank goodness. But it's probably a question for the treasurer as to what he would do if that was the case. I'll have to think about that question.
Maybe yes.
Okay,
Well, we still have to make the payment.
yeah.
Bondholders are looking for X number of dollars, doesn't make a difference what we collect, more or less.
So I hate to ask again, but is the boiler and the roof baked into this, or we have to come up with the money separately for it?
When we made the decision and authorized for the money, we had that discussion with MSBA,
Yeah.
knowing that we were moving in. And the message that we received from MSBA is it would be on a basis where it'd be prorated.
Right. But a
So-
roof might go 25 years as a proration.
It could. So what I'm going to do is call MSBA and get a feel for where they will come in on this.
I just hate to authorize a certain amount and find out we really need to borrow 42 instead of 40.
Well, one thing to keep in mind, we're not demolishing Deacon's.
That was gonna be my next question, was what happens
So-
to Deacon's and
right.
can we sell it, and what happens to the proceeds?
I'm glad you asked the question. So the first question, so when the actual decision is made to sell Deacon's, because I don't know, maybe Kim or Joyce knows, I don't know when the actual decision is, the state will say, you don't have any more students in there, now it's time to reimburse us? Or is the decision made when it's no longer functioning as a school? So one of the questions I asked the town administrator was, we know you consider the Deacon's property valuable, and the town wants it to do two things. One, to sell the property, and two, to generate tax revenue to whoever buys it. So what I said to him, let's say you sell that property for X. Can that X be used to pay down the debt of this bond? And the answer to that question, thankfully, is yes. It is one of the things that can be used, because that money is quite restricted. And I'm sure, therefore, that money could also be used to pay for whatever is left that the MSBA will charge us for the boiler and the roof. So in actual fact, my guess is it will cost us something, but it won't have to come out of that.
It's possible the boiler has some value, but it'll be 5 years old.
Right, who knows, maybe the person who wants to buy the place wants the boiler forward now.
So I would defer to the representatives for PMA. Do you have an answer?
Well, the process that we're going through with the MSBA program is that they take a series of steps, and the point of the process that we're in right now is that we've picked a preferred solution. We created the budget for the 90 million, and then we, having passed the MSBA's approval, we entered the next step, which was to refine the design in a schematic design. The MSBA's program calls for the estimates that are prepared on that design to become the basis of the funding. So that's why we've just gone through the 2 independent estimators to get a good confident sense of what the number is. We've come in under budget, and that budget will be, that estimate will be submitted with the schematic design. Upon review by the MSBA, that's when they will draft up a project scope and budget agreement, where they look at the project and they say, you know, Wareham's base compensation rate is the figure X, and we look at the building, and we've already done preliminaries on this about what they say is eligible for reimbursement, and then before coming up with this proposed grant figure, they will take into consideration the DECA school. So it'll be part of this next step of the process to go to first a project scope and budget agreement, and then ultimately, once that's settled, a project funding agreement.
For my write-up, have you guys laid out possible savings? Clearly, we've saved quite a bit from shutting mine down and redistributing students. Is there more savings to be had? Clearly, this building will be insulated, whereas the old one, it's probably not so much. High efficient, well, there's a new boiler over there, but
It's not a new
Less
boiler
ma-
in mine.
So what I will say about
Operational cost would be to operate the building.
the school building committee has gone through the initial part of the process, and there were a lot of cost-saving measures that were identified early on and incorporated into the current design. And the issue about the Minot being able to be closed down and the new school to be sited on its existing footprint was a choice that was made that yielded savings. The choice of the Minot site was another one.
But long-range operating costs, we're trying to ask the taxpayers to come up with money here, and if possible, we're gonna save some money over there, as there are less staff for maintenance, less gas, less electricity. Have you guys made some estimates on, is the busing a little cheaper to that site? It's probably cheaper than having the 2 schools, but we're already at that point now.
Yes, it would be cheaper as far as busing because it would be less time that would be on the road. The energy right now, our windows, our doors, the insulation, we're not saving any energy at all. In the new
It's not your own
building, yeah, in the new building, we're energy efficient. We went for the green design, so we know that when we open it would be cost effective with the energy consumption.
And he's asking for a estimated cost of operating based on the construction of the building.
So one of the
Yearly operating costs.
They're relatively early on in the design. One of the steps that the designer will do as they move forward is they'll look at the proposed HVAC system, and they'll prepare an energy model, and we'll get a sense for how the building will perform. But I do want to say that we've got a lot of design left to do. There's a period called design development and then construction documents. And it's going to be a continual process where we'll look for available places where we can value manage and come up with better solutions that will cost less. That'll be inherent in our process.
We're not gonna air condition an empty building all summer, are we?
Air
We're gonna have
conditioning,
some kind of zones.
right now there are some zones. There's also a dehumidification piece in there. And if you walk through our buildings today, we would have loved to have had it because some of the floors were pretty slick.
In the new building, if I might speak, you've been there, there's been discussion of what we're going to air condition. We haven't decided that yet, but there's a certain requirement that areas, all the sped areas and the like, be air conditioned year-round. And they run summer schools also in some of those wings, and we've experienced some oddly warm weather this summer. And so that's all being considered. It hasn't been decided yet.
Don't begrudge air conditioning to places where people are, just empty places.
They even proposed ducting the whole building, but only being the mechanicals for certain areas. So it's prepared, so if we want to air condition it 5 years down the road, we just have to buy the mechanicals and not have to duct it.
Couple of things. One item which people want to know is, why don't we just repair the old buildings? Now, I know as part of your program, you looked into that, and it's something that I think in your presentation at town meeting, it's important that you say, yes, we did look at that. And as I recall, repairing mine, it will cost just about as much as it will cost the town's share of the new building. But it's important that people understand that.
You're right, and so for anyone that wants to see that answer now, that is on the website. That information is, what the cost would have been, what the reimbursement would have been or not been. That information is all on the website. But you're right, that should be presented at town meeting. But in the meantime, anyone could go to the website to see that information.
And it would only take Minot. Deacon's was not in the project, and we were allowed to bring Deacon's in, so then we would still be facing, what are we going to do with a 50-year-old building?
Right, and as I recall, in round numbers, on your website, basically, the $40 million is going to be charged to the town for the new building would be approximately what it would cost to repair and bring up to code Minot.
Just one building.
That's one building, and somewhere around 30 to 40 million will be required for Deacon's. So it's important to point out that by doing this, we're not only saving energy costs, we're actually saving maintenance and repair costs for the whole town. And it's definitely cost effective when you look at it that way. As opposed to spending 80 million, we're spending 40 and we're getting a better building, better environment for our children. So I think that's really important. On the energy cost, you haven't done a full evaluation of the new design. You have experience with other school systems and designs that you've built. And perhaps you could talk a little bit, say, on this project, by building the new school to LEED design standards, we were able to reduce the operating cost by $1 million a year, or $500,000 a year, and project that over 40 years. It's a lot of money you can save. You take a look at another school system where you've actually done it, and you have the results.
I think to add to David's point, when Monday, when Kim and I were going through the building with WCTV with Queen and Steve, we were mentioning that there's two issues. One is bringing up to code, which means you replace the wiring, blah, 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 and all that stuff. But that doesn't change the building, you bring it up to code. Now you have to match MSBA's requirements, which they have a certain square footage for the classrooms. So if you have a building or a wing with 20 classrooms, 10 on each side of the corridor, when you renovate to match the MSB requirements, you probably lose 4 classrooms, because now you have to expand the ones you have. So now you're down to 16 classrooms, you have to put up another building, because you have to make up for that loss. So renovation is not necessarily just putting in new windows in an existing building. You're gonna have to match requirements as well as code, which means you're gonna add to it. So the renovation and addition, and each building would have to go forward.
I think there's a risk of trying to defend this so much that we're gonna sound like we're hiding something. I'd keep this a little bit more simple. We're gonna save a lot of money by putting up a new building and consolidating 2 schools. I mean, and the numbers show. So
As I said, we're planning for over upwards of 400 people at the meeting.
And if we don't get the 50 million, some other town will get the 50 million.
That's a very good point.
And we're all crowded into Degas. So as simple as possible, as direct as possible, and I think they'll understand it. And I think the stories we can all tell about Minot, several members of us here have been through both schools, and we know full well what the needs are. So it's not a question of here, but there's a lot of factions out there who are going to go to the polls, and we have to try and convince as many of them as possible.
To do the right thing.
Yes. Like I say, I advocate and charge that 7-year-old lives down the street from me. So you all better vote. Any other questions?
7-year-olds?
Oh,
Not the 7-year-olds.
no, we'll make the paperwork satisfied so she'll understand it, so that should take care of everything.
Great.
Any other questions? Do you want me to pass the hat or anything here? We started fundraising early? Dennis, you've been very quiet back there. You want to say anything or anything?
So nice to come to a meeting and just listen. It's a blessing. Thank you, Bernie. I just would like to add that what Bernie was saying about just repairing the buildings. You're going to get the buildings you have. They're just going to have new systems in it. They're still not going to be buildings that are going to be able to deliver a 21st century education. They're not going to have the types of learning spaces that will be baked into this new building, which is really important. The whole focus of education has changed with technology, and now with this paradigm shift, we are able to design buildings in which children can learn with the guidance of their teachers and using the technologies that are available, and also learn what those technologies mean to them as they go on in their life, because it's a different world than the one we grew up in. So that's where we're going with this.
And I want people driving down Minot Avenue, looking at that building and saying, I want to live here.
And Dennis, if I might, putting in our book in the section which will cover this issue, I'm going to try and put in the floor plans that you have, because they're not going to be changed. And the overall footprint that we've been talked about for the property itself. And I have reasonably good black and whites, which I'll have to use. We're not doing color. So I'll get back to you if I need something.
Anything you need, you just let me know. We'll get you.
Okay, because you might want, on your printers, better quality, doing black and white. And
Yeah, we can do color, black and white. We can even have still shots of some of the renderings that the committee's been looking at.
I see a possible 400 printing coming off your printers over there in color.
Oh, what's that?
You're going to volunteer to do our 400 copies in color?
I don't know if we can
Kelly,
do.
that could offload us right there, wouldn't it? Be great.
I don't know if we can do
Well,
400.
you're not going to step up? Oh.
We can, no, but we can give, we can work with you and give you what you need, and you can see whatever it takes
Thank you.
to get this done. Yeah. But,
It was a try, it was a shot.
well, certainly all the electronic files, and I'm not sure 400 of what, 420-page books, or 400 of single sheets, it's a big
Oh,
difference.
no, 420-page books. Two
Only
pages
20?
per
Only
next
20,
gloss font number.
2 sides.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I have a quick comment.
Sure.
If you can give me some estimates on cost savings, my angle would be that money would be put into education, which you say the building provides a better education, but it's really the teachers, more money to teachers, less money to building maintenance and energy costs is really, I think, where the angle that would make sense to, well, me anyway, and hopefully other people.
So you're looking for that for next week?
For my write-up, I gotta turn this in, next Saturday?
Appreciate it.
Saturday,
Help me.
This
Mike?
Saturday or next Saturday?
I'm asking.
It'll be next Saturday. We have a week window, and October 11th is a capital planning. So we'll see what
It would
we have.
it's just be estimates, but I would, if I can say something, I think that,
Mike, would you like to say
can see
anything?
that education improves
This is
because
the
we're
building committee, I was here for
less here and more there.
support, really.
Okay.
That'd be all, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to close the hearing. Motion taken second, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, the hearing is closed. Next item on the agenda, approve the meeting minutes for September 19th.
Kelly distributed those by email to all of us.
Indeed.
So I will move that we approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve as printed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The vote, thank you. Any liaison reports? Anyone watched the very exciting meetings we've had?
I witnessed the planning department Monday night.
You witnessed, oh, we did you one better. We
I
were
saw
there.
both of you, yeah.
But the camera's always pointed forward, and there were some activities going on behind us that we were totally aware of until we, there was some altercation, so to speak.
Yes.
Why don't we go over some of our votes? I mean, I think there's a few items we may change based on more recent experience. Article 1, 2, and 3 are the usual ones. We don't have any information on them. Capital plan, free cash, non-paid bills. Article 4, transfer of funds, McKinney-Vento funds. May I have a motion for approval on that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion's made and seconded. Any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote, 6-0. Minot Forest debt exclusion. I'm sorry, is the Degas Minot Forest School, Degas Minot School at Forest? No, in Minot Forest.
The Deacon School at Minot
Minot
Forest.
Forest, yes.
Yes.
Selectmen took the thunder out of the building committee of naming it, that's for sure. May I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Before we go any further, anybody want to enter a comment that Ellis may take consideration in his notes?
On the debt exclusion?
Yes. We've also gone very far beyond in our discussion, which is appropriate. But still, I think it's appropriate to make comments if one feels they'd like to.
No, I'm fine.
I'll send them around for comments.
Okay.
No, appreciate that.
I don't see a negative view on this one to put in, but, you know, sometimes I try to put another side in for people to think about, but,
Mhm.
I feel we need a school like everyone else.
Right.
Kind of got a little dig in there, the savings could be applied to teacher salaries and all, though, I think.
Well, I mean, that's just, yeah, I mean, you could say we're gonna lower taxes by keeping teachers at this. It's not the building sort of matters, but it's really the teachers and the parents that make a school.
Yeah, brick and mortar,
There's much
but
point in
it's
building a
houses
new
up.
building if we're gonna cut the budget of the schools.
Yeah, well,
Right.
hopefully they'll be pushing maintenance into education.
Well, there will be more money available for whatever use. And
Yeah.
that's the important thing.
Yeah, and maybe I could just leave it to that and let people use their imaginations.
Mhm. The Article 6, the harbor services permit, we just heard from Gary this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
So he's roping us into future payments. We've made a decision for, what, 5 years of 60,000 into 400,000 in 10 years with interest on it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
So as long as we understand we're making a 10-year decision here.
It is a commitment, and, yes.
We never actually heard, but what does it cost to dredge? I mean, is this tens of millions of dollars?
People refuse to answer this question. you know, or is this study just gonna get
And I-
done and then
well,
thrown
Sentiment
aside?
who
or-
cares about that money, but I mean, can this town actually afford to do this stuff?
Probably not without grants. Dredging is extremely expensive. And I don't know any numbers, but it's a lot of money. You're
I would
talking millions
imagine.
and millions.
Yeah.
And especially, well, it also depends how far you go with the dredging. We do have a huge amount of waterfront. We have very long channel coming into the harbor here, silted in. Many places in Onset is silted in, such as they say.
Where does the federal stuff stop,
I think-
coming into the
I
harbor?
think the federal stuff comes in the channels that lead to the harbors. How far they come in, maybe to the end of the buoys, but they were talking about removing the buoys on Wareham
Yeah.
River. So I'm not sure at this point.
It's a terrible idea. I hit rocks kayaking out there. You have no chance without those buoys.
Right.
That's correct.
David doesn't even get close with his sailboat.
I wouldn't get near one of those wheels going around that long,
Oh,
what do they
yes.
call it?
That's
Thing
the,
goes way too far in.
yes.
Okay. I'll go down the articles in order in case anyone wants to do a reconsideration or would like to change their votes, et cetera. Article 7, transfer the funds to WCTV. Article 8, return unused funds for completed projects for the CPC. Article 9 is the house numbering bylaw, and we haven't taken a vote on that.
There's
What's the
something in there
purpose
that's,
behind this?
Pardon?
Is this a public safety thing? or-
This is a public safety
Yes. it is.
issue.
May I have all those in favor, may I have a vote, approval, please?
On,
The house numbering bylaw.
I'd like to have a little presentation on it.
Okay, we can go by that.
we
Because of the circumstances.
about this?
Yeah, what I think is, David and I and Jerry were listening to the meeting Monday night, and they went into this a lot in greater depth than we heard from Ken.
Mm-hmm.
And if you'd like, I'll ask Ken to come up with, because I
Yeah,
believe
the
I'll
house
schedule a meeting
numbering.
next week. Pardon?
And that was the selectmen
Yes.
cleaning that one up.
No, yes,
Yes.
in the,
Yeah.
yeah, I think Pat was
Yeah, it
on.
was Patrick Tropiano, who I got the explanation from.
Yes.
He's kind of the one who is sponsoring it.
He championed it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
C doesn't really work on this one because my front door doesn't actually face the street.
That was
Requiring me to put the
mentioned.
number on the front door, it's not gonna be seen by anyone.
Yeah.
Under-
If you would like, we'll pass on that, and I'll ask someone to come in next week. In our next meeting, we'll put that way.
I'd like to pass on that.
Okay, and the CPC,
What I'd like to, excuse me,
go ahead.
what I'd like to do, because of the issues that came up at the planning board meeting on Monday evening, I'd like to know what the planning board voted on these various articles before we vote on them.
That sounds fair. My write-ups on these, I think you've seen them, are basically saying they don't have a lot of financial impact. So
Right.
It's really another committee that's judging public safety or neighborhood beautification or whatever they're trying to get to. Right. And I don't know that we necessarily, by the time we vote, understand enough about the implications of each law to, I mean, the house numbering thing, I think we can all figure that out, but some of the other things.
Some of the other ones are,
They're pretty complicated, and I don't, we vote on them, and I don't fully understand it. I just get to the point where I don't think they're going to have any financial impact, so I say, okay, but I don't know if they're good laws or not. And,
You have
I
that
guess
word
I
you
don't wanna
put in
say
there
that.
too.
so I'd like to
I use the word.
understand how the planning board voted on these, because there were questions that they had on some of them.
Yeah.
They were talking about revising others, and before,
De minimis financial impact on the town.
If you
Yes.
say de minimis financial impact, therefore we don't have an opinion. I mean, can we do that? Has it
Well,
been done?
that I guess was why I brought it up, was to start the discussion, and I don't care either way, but I want to make it clear that we're approving it on the basis that it doesn't have a financial impact, not that it's a good law. 'Cause I'm not convinced that by the time we're done discussing it, unless you go to those zoning meetings or whatever they are, the planning board
Even
meetings.
if you watch them, you're still not sure if it's, you know.
Yeah, I mean, half of these could be solutions looking for problem, I don't know. I have no idea.
I mean, overall, I think the intent of them is good, but they,
Yeah, they might
They have
be
to be-
fine, and my premise is that someone else is supposed to vet them carefully,
yes,
and that we're not doing so. So in my write-ups, I'm basically saying it doesn't appear to be bad from a finance perspective, but I can't say for sure it's a great law. I don't know.
I agree.
Mhm.
So
I
if
can't.
other people want to say it doesn't look like it has a financial impact, so we don't have much of an opinion, and vote that some way somehow, all of us abstain, or I don't know. That's fine, but I just thought I'd bring it up as a discussion. That,
Now, if you like, the rest of the questions we haven't voted on are the zoning.
yeah,
yes.
And so,
they should
would
vote
Ken be,
first, though.
yeah, would Ken be sufficient, or would you like Ken and George to come in?
I'd like Ken and George.
Okay,
Who's George?
He's the chair of the,
chair of the
Planning board.
planning board. Had a difficult time that evening. Okay, then,
but I'd like to point out, I
Sure.
think part of the problem that they had the other evening in the meetings is because the zoning bylaws are not crystal clear, and they leave some room for interpretation, which creates issues.
oh, the way that some of the language you're right there, they were so ambiguous as to what their intent was. And in some cases, they wrote the sentence twice, giving a choice in one sentence and no choice in the second sentence.
Right, now, again, just my opinion, I think that I give Ken and his group credit for going through the last couple of years and revising a lot of the bylaws, because there were more inconsistencies in them. And they've taken care of a lot of that, and that's to their credit and the town meeting's credit for voting in their favor. We've had those in the last couple of meetings, and they've improved. But I would like to have Ken and George go through and tell us what they think we should vote on these.
Okay, our next meeting is either 3rd of October or the 10th. And I'd rather do the 3rd because the 10th, that week, we're going to be printing so that we can follow charter by having it available by the 15th. So, next meeting will be the 3rd.
All right.
Say, Bernie, what's going on with the 17th?
We haven't heard from WCPC. I'll ask them next week also.
The 17th, Water Pollution Control Facility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I got an email from Guy, a quick one saying that something about it was going to be put into capital or whatever.
Well, he had two requests initially.
Okay,
One was for equipment, and that's moved into capital outlay, going to be moved in. And the second one was for transferring funds.
all right,
into
I'll
his account.
look at the email I got and see if you forward it to you, if it's anything to do with this.
Mhm.
Oh, I have a question, since we're on capital, is it appropriate for the harbor master to buy his trailers in capital, or it's a capital item? Does that make sense that he buys it out of this? I know it might be a different source of money.
It is. He's taking the mooring fees and everything and using that.
Yeah,
But it's still,
but he doesn't have to.
still
go
has
through
to be on the
regular
capital, still has to be on the capital plan. And you just, let's just see. Replace floating docks,
All right, so
420,
there's more to it than I know about.
does he have a? Right now, he does not have,
I didn't think he did.
no, he does not have the the trailer in here,
How about the communications equipment?
and the communications equipment is not in here either. He does have some other vehicles. He has 2 half-ton pickups that he's talking about that he discussed.
Yeah, and his lease payment wouldn't come in capital outlay.
That would come in capital. Yes.
I thought it was gonna be operating.
No, it's a vehicle. It's capital.
On my write-ups, I said mean things on the Tremont nail remediation. If anyone wants me to not say mean things, you can let me know.
All right.
Well, I think you're expressing a sentiment that it was
Might as well own it.
discussed around this table, and that's where the comments come from.
Yeah, we might as well own it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who made the mistakes, but they were made. How's that for passing?
So Bernie, about number 19 too, what's the status on
The dredging,
that? Yeah.
that would
The
be the one that was
petition note.
referred.
Right,
Um,
what are we
I
gonna,
believe Don, he will speak on behalf of his issue because he wanted the publicity very appropriately so. I think he's inclined to withdraw it because it is a duplication.
so what is our vote?
We haven't, have we?
I
Excuse
think we
me,
should vote.
we didn't vote on that yet.
I think we should vote that we support the transfer of the funds from the harbor master, and this is covered by that, and we don't need it.
I agree.
So we're voting against it, basically.
Okay, and on that, can I have a positive motion though to approve and we can,
I'll make a
Motion to
motion to.
approve.
Go ahead.
Second.
motion's made and second. All those in favor say aye.
What are we voting on?
This is dredging.
This is 19?
19,
19.
dredging.
If you vote, this is a positive motion, so
I,
if you want to
That's against.
support this, you vote yes on it. If you don't, you vote no.
Gotcha.
okay. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed.
06-0. I used a positive motion, it's in Robert's rules also, and what you do is when you look at the vote and you find it's 06-0, you know that it was declined. Selectmen have a motion to disapprove, so they have a 6-0-0.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
It's just a little technicality, I know, but documentation-wise, it allows someone when they read it in a year from now or 2 years from now, what was really done.
So can I ask a question about capital? Every capital item, request for capital, whether it's at the spring or fall, should go through the capital, be on the capital plan, through the capital committee.
That is correct.
So anything you heard tonight, you should be able to see in the exact.
Yes. Yes. And that's correct. So this is, just for your information, that's natural resources there. And what they do is they project it out 5 years, and it does get revised on an annual basis depending upon what the priorities are.
So what if, like, something new came up and there is time to go to the capital committee to have it on warrant for the
Yes.
fall?
The capital planning committee is meeting on the 11th of next month to make recommendations for town meeting.
But it isn't a requirement, I don't believe in our charter, that it be on the capital outlay to be approved or presented at town meeting.
It would be a
It should
capital
be.
item,
It
but
should
it
be.
can come out, of.
They can do separate article.
Right.
Yeah, it should be there because in most capital planning plans that I've seen, they've even gone to the point of the life expectancy of the individual trucks, cars, whatever they purchase. So they have a period in which they can anticipate something being renewed. And if town maintenance says we don't have to because we don't drive it at all, so it's got an extended life expectancy, but anticipation. Anything else?
They pulled that housing department warrant yet.
Not that I'm aware of. they're going to the additional housing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to them working it out, but
That's what they're
sounds like
talking
it's a
about.
mess.
I've got some paperwork from CPC, I think I've copied everybody. They changed the legislation, I think last year, 2 years ago,
Yeah.
so they can invest in new construction in this, what they're doing. However, how he outlined his intent to accomplish this is what is screwing everything up, because there are in some areas he cannot do it, some areas he can. He can't make it separate then, he can't go into a pilot project, he can't isolate that say only Wareham residents.
It sounds like the biggest problem is he's building a town building on state land, but that might just be me.
That was my issue also.
Then there's the way it came about. It should be from CPC and not from them. But that's,
Hmm,
they should pull this, but
I think he will. It's been recommended to him by the selectmen that they do that.
it sounds like a good project,
Well, it's,
The
the
intent
intent is
is
very good.
Mm,
The
it
intent
is.
is good.
but
Yeah.
it's a
It's the
mess.
methodology that needs work.
Yeah, well, building a town building on state land. I don't think you need to go any further than that.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Motion made, second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I dare
That's a
you.
6-0-0.
That was a positive motion.
Yes.
Stated positively.
I'm a stickler